Hello and welcome to Capital Connection with me, Kamran Yusuf. An alliance of political parties that have rejected the election results has now decided to field joint candidates for the election of Prime Minister, Speaker and the Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly. This happens as the controversy regarding the much talked about RTS or Result Transmission System is far from over. In fact, the latest claim by National Database and Registration Authority or NADRA that the RTS system was functioning properly on the election day has further deepened the crisis. This has prompted the Election Commission of Pakistan to order inquiry into the RTS fiasco. In the middle of all this, Imran Khan is of course finalizing his plans for the formation of government both in the centre and in Punjab and KPK province. So a lot is happening in the post-election scenario, and we will try to discuss all these issues in our today's edition. But first, let me introduce my panelists. We have with us in our studios Mr. Farrukh Pitafi, well-known political commentator, senior journalist, and of course he is currently with state-run Pakistan Television. Mr. Wasim Abbasi, senior journalist and a political correspondent of the News International. And last but not the least, we have Mr. Zameer Haider. He is also a senior journalist and currently anchor person with recently launched Public TV. Welcome to all of you in the show.
Thank you.
And let me start with you, Mr. Zameer Haider. As you know that now the would-be grand opposition alliance decided to, put up a tough stance both in the parliament and outside the parliament. Do you think that Imran Khan should be concerned at the moment?
Thank you. I think he should be, because it would be his first ever time to, govern the already difficult country. Because we have seen that in last couple of years, despite that we have seen political stability in a way that the democracy is continuing and the political system is continuing. If you count the Musharraf era, then it's 15 years in consecutive, and now it's going to be another 5 years. But since you have mentioned that the grand opposition is tidying up against Imran, and they will be ready to give him difficult time. And I think that this is the beauty of the democracy. If you have a good opposition, as what we witnessed in the last government, we were criticizing throughout that People's Party has not actually acted like an opposition, and Zardari had this lame excuse to say that we will start opposition in the last year of the last government's tenure. But having said that, I think that the tough time outside parliament would be a little uncalled for, because we are already faced with difficult times as far as economy is concerned.
But I think all the main political parties have already made it clear that they are not going to resort to those tactics that
which Imran Khan
was using. Whatever they would be doing, that would be strictly under the democratic order.
Yeah,
so I'll come back to you, but let me bring in Farrukh Pitafi here. The big question is, of course, it's a healthy sign that, okay, fine, that opposition or the would-be opposition parties have every right to, register their protest within the parliament.
Right.
But the question is, all these political parties think, even Sherry Rahman candidly said that this is going to be the puppet government.
Okay. Well, that is quite interesting. If you look at Pakistan's politics, you have this feeling of deja vu. Every time a government comes, the government will say that the elections were clean, there wasn't any problem at all. And when you look at the opposition, they will always claim two things. A, there was rigging, and two, that government has been installed by somebody else, like aliens, like extraterrestrials, like somebody other than the people of Pakistan.
But can I ask you a little question? Because the difference this time around is that except Tehreek-e-Insaf, all other parties are claiming that these elections were rigged. So that was different.
Welcome back to 2013. Exactly the same thing happened, with the exception of PMLN. Everybody was saying that the elections were rigged.
But then the Supreme Court gave clean chit.
Yeah, that came later. Remember one thing, at that time too, the question was whether there is a grand conspiracy to steal the election. And the problem was for a person who has not only been a journalist, but who has been involved or in understanding or studying the campaigns, election campaigns, it was difficult for me to reconcile with the fact, with the claim that somehow ballot boxes can be rigged. Somehow you can manipulate elections on a grand scale, right? This is exactly what I was saying 5 years ago. This is what I'm saying today. Thanks to that inquiry commission, whatever I was saying was qualified.
So even in this election, you don't see any grand conspiracy to install Imran Khan as Pakistan's
Where's
Prime
the
Minister?
evidence? Remember this.
I think for evidence, I believe that Wasim would have different take on it. Do you think that we have the evidence? Because all the parties are crying foul at the moment. But one view is that since now you are defeated, you need to accept the results, that Imran Khan has a genuine wave. He has been genuinely voted to power. And these parties are not willing to reconcile with this fact.
There is no denying that Imran has genuine following. We have all seen the PTI has some genuine following too. But there is no denying also that there is evidence of at least pre-poll rigging. Everybody can see that there was not level playing field offered to all political parties. And also on the polling day.
We'll talk about the pre-poll, but what about the election day?
The election day went smoothly because I was covering one constituency in Mianwali districts also. But yeah, on the daytime, there's no controversy. Everybody is saying that the polling was going smoothly and there was no evidence of anything except for some areas where I've also witnessed that the polling agents were not allowed to sit in some constituencies, including the one that I was covering in Mianwali. But mostly it went smooth. But in the evening time, when the Form 45 were not provided to political agents, which is a requirement under the election law, and also when the RTS system broke down, and we are seeing the stories that the RTS system was working fine. Nadra is claiming it was working fine, and somebody ordered them to stop transmitting results through this system. So,
do you find any conspiracy in
I
it?
have something to say on that, but I will say it later once he is finished.
So,
Because it is quite important.
at least one thing is clear, that if you are not allowing polling agents to be there at the time of counting, this raises all kind of questions, and this makes whole exercise.
No, the big question is whether this RTS was actually crashed or it was done it deliberately, because Nadra had a different position now.
But Nadra has never said that they were told to bring the RTS down. They have never said it. So
they said that the RTS was working properly.
Yesterday's story in one paper was amazing, because at the start they claimed that there is an investigation that reveals that there is some kind of malpractice or they were ordered. But they are quoting certain sources who don't have the courage to come on record. B, Nadra never claims this, and yet Election Commission still goes for an inquiry. The problem, Kamran, is
but
that
even
on
if
that
you
day,
believe that story, they were saying that they had all the computer logs, all the evidence that that was functioning, and even Nadra chairman.
Have you seen the
I don't know
rebuttal
it is
of
ethical or
election?
not. Even Nadra chairman calling our reporters who cover Nadra, even in the VRs on the election day, and saying the same thing, telling that Election Commission was not telling the truth because there was no problem on our part.
Election Commission, by the way, came up with a rebuttal, and that was quite interesting. Election Commission says that after 7 days you claim that you have half the record, that can be arranged later on as well. Remember, at that day, on that day, I was witness to this boisterous environment where Election Commission is very happy that they have conducted elections very well, and all of a sudden those people deflating when things started crashing.
So again, you don't see any conspiracy, and you're really
I
ready
don't,
to buy
honestly.
the Election Commission's perspective that it was a genuine, mistake. It was a genuine problem.
It was as I have also talked to
support
certain people. There are two things. Like one they say that RTS was functioning well, and from RTS to RMS it was choked, and that is why the system came down. One thing. Secondly, what happened was when most of the returning officers were unable to post the things on that app, they thought that it's not properly working, so they deleted the app and they tried to reload that app on their handsets, whichever they were given.
RTS or RMS?
No, I'm talking about
you're talking
RTS.
about
RTS.
Now, what happened was there was a mapping code which was only given to the presiding officers, and that mapping code was actually, if you once you you delete the app, when you have to reload the app, there was a mapping code. And the mapping code was only available with the presiding officer. It was not with the returning officers. So that is why the whole it was because most of the people didn't know. And they were not actually literate with that equipment.
Whose fault it was when you were introducing some kind of a technology?
I think NADRA and the Election Commission should be sharing this burden on their shoulders.
Don't you think that first? Don't you think that first we need to really determine this thing, that whether RTS 1 really crashed, or it was working?
It was choked because
NADRA had a different position.
The NADRA claimed that it was duly checked and tested during the PS14 by-elections of Saeed Ghani, and it worked very well. It was only one PS election with a limited number of polling stations, but when you are talking about general elections, there were like good thousands and thousands of polling stations which were actually pouring in that data to the RTS.
Over 80,000.
Over 80,000. So that is what actually
about the quantum.
That is what actually happened. And when they saw that it has crashed down, they panicked. And when you panic,
the problem is that those who designed this RTS, they knew that it could happen, and that kind of the burden or the data that it had to deal with. So it's not something
actually there are two departments, right?
Okay.
NADRA is claiming something different, and ECP they are coming up with different and contradictory claims. So it has to be established who is at fault, basically.
I think they should share the responsibility.
When it comes
an inquiry commission should be established.
I'm totally with you when you talk about fixing the responsibility, right? You have to have an inquiry commission because such mistakes should not be repeated. But remember, in Pakistan, where you don't have that kind of tech literacy, when you introduce an app, usually it is tested in a very controlled environment. You think that you have tested it for stress, you have tested it for everything, functioning as well. But when it comes to the actual load and people not understanding the technology, things crash.
And given, and we'll continue our discussion, because given the fact that in a country like Pakistan, when you already so much controversies, and then this entire episode really, now it was because of this reason, this has given a kind of a reason to all those political
at
parties.
That time it will happen, people will talk about it, but remember, don't only blame the Election Commission of Pakistan, blame the previous assembly which actually okayed everything of this.
But they were saying that they had given enough powers. I think we will continue our discussions because this is very important point, because the entire case for all those parties who are protesting and saying that these elections were rigged, actually based on this fact that why this RTS system or result transmission system crashed on the election day. Our discussion will continue, but we have to go for a break here, so stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching Capital Connection, and we are discussing the post-election scenario, particularly the controversy regarding the much talked about RTS. We know that Election Commission of Pakistan has already ordered inquiry into that RTS fiasco, but opposition parties or would-be opposition parties at the moment are really crying foul. Before the break, Mr. Farag, you were saying that the Parliament should be blamed for this, but the previous parliament, but the parliament or the previous government said that we had given them enough authority, enough powers that they could have ensure free and fair elections, but they failed to perform that fundamental duty. And even there was an article in Dawn newspaper written by Mr. Mudassir Rizvi, who actually heads the FAFIN. He also talked about that never before in the history Election Commission was that powerful.
Yeah, but remember, when you talk about Election Commission being empowered, it is an incremental process, and you have hits and runs, right? Hits and misses. What we are seeing at this moment is a fiasco that developed because of the lack of technology or lack of understanding. Things when they fall apart, people start blaming each other. I'm not saying that the previous parliament is solely responsible. What I'm saying is that all this entire process was rushed. It was rushed during the last year of the previous government and the parliament. It could have taken some time, and we would have tried it really well before introducing the technology. Right now, what you see, Kamran, is a lot of conjecture. I know people are talking about RTS because it is the only smoking gun available. But when you talk about the rest of
no, the other two things, Form 45 and
Yeah,
polling
that was
agents
because
were
of the-
being
that was-
thrown out of the
but
during the
here
campaign.
again opposition keeps on shifting its goalpost. First they said that they were not being delivered the Form 45. Then they say that they were handing us on the plain paper. And then you must have read Mudassar, and you must have heard Pildat's version as well. They said that they probably didn't publish the number of papers that were needed, and then they had to hand it on the plain paper. After that, when Election Commission of Pakistan says that we are going to publish all Form 45 online, then they say, People's Party says, that well, actual problem is with the ballot box. It is not with the Form 45.
The problem with the online is that when you
You're-
provide that Form 45 on that day, because now some people say that they can change that
but
Form 45 because
that
if you were
would
given
change the reality of the
on
box.
the election day that
No,
on plain paper,
but-
because if
but-
you were given those on plain paper and then when
But
you
if
were
they have it, but
uploading the original one, then how
Cameron,
could you
but
really
if they
justify
have it, if they have that plain paper with them, how can they change that result which was actually written on that plain paper? So they cannot. So the thing is that, you know what happened?
No, the plain
Form 45
paper cannot be verified.
The copies of the Form 45 were supposed to be given to all the
Polling agents.
all the polling agents of all the political parties sitting
At that
there,
time.
right? And what in many cases where the polling agents saw that they have lost from this polling station, they left without taking the Form 45, and they have done it deliberately. And there are reports that they were told that if when you see that you are losing, just leave the Form 45. It was pre-planned on the part of the political parties as well.
But opposition
So they don't
parties,
even
but,
don't-
but opposition parties.
I have that
okay,
message.
But opposition parties, what they were saying, that when they started protesting that there was some kind of foul play going on, at that time only 2% results were available. At that time they didn't know that who is winning the elections. So you can't say that we raised these questions.
Let me
because-
give you a counter argument. Let me give you a
When the
counter
RTS
argument.
went down, it was
at
almost
2:30,
32%
at
of the result.
2:30, Mushahid Hussain Sayyid writes a letter to the Election Commission of Pakistan. It is not about rigging, it is not about any foul play. I'm talking about the election day, and he is requesting extension of 1 hour in the polling process. Do you know when does that happen? During previous elections, it was not PMLN that was requesting it, it was PTI. When you feel that your voter is not showing up, you request extension of time. And this always happens, and usually happens from the losing side. This time also happened.
But what could have happened had they allowed that?
Like
Extension.
I mean, nothing
It was
would
not
have
a big
changed.
deal.
There was no
Nothing
provision.
would have
It
changed.
was already
It was
already
I
extended.
think the weather was hot and humid.
No, no,
Some
no.
people say
Yeah.
that it should have
The
extended.
weather was
it
very
very
late.
late.
The time was already extended, so it's not that it's not that easy. Like
No, some people say
decide.
the first when they extended the time, it was on the request of the PTI.
Yes.
When the PMLN requested,
No,
they
no,
didn't.
but
they should have
but you have to look at the time itself. At 6, you still have sun up there. There is light up there, right? At 7, it is Maghrib time, sunset time. It is closer to sunset. If you want to start the process in pitch black, it is your choice. But people again will talk about conspiracies. Remember, the only reason RTS choked or it crashed, and then they had to manually transport the Form 45, caused so much debate and conspiracy.
And the delay was because most of the ROs were actually were waiting that the app would be up soon, and that they waited, and it was almost 2 in the morning till that they thought that it's not working, and then they decided to actually physically go to their.
Let me bring in Wasim.
Yeah, I have 2 points to make here. Firstly, I don't want to talk about the extension of the time. It was already extended for 1 hour, maybe. But what if they were losing already? PMLN was losing. What was obstacle in increasing the time? They would have been exposed. But in the evening time, Form 45.
Election Commission doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
It doesn't want to defeat you. It doesn't want to expose you.
But
it
the
just
Election
wants to
Commission just
conduct the election.
It was
But
not
have you come-
any
have you
party's
come-
election commission.
But
It was
have
not
you-
any
have you-
party's
have you come
election
across
commission.
have you come across their statement after the elections?
Yeah, I
when
did.
the controversy appeared, they said the losing side should accept their defeat. This is not election commission talking, you know.
Okay,
is
this
just like a
brings.
British-
Okay,
Yes, of course.
let's
When you blame on some-
let me
But I
bring
have not finished. The point about the Form 45. The Form 45 was not the only smoking gun, and there's no evidence that the political agents left just because realizing that they are being defeated in
Yes,
that
yes,
polling agent.
yes,
There is no
there
evidence
is
for that.
evidence.
This
There
has
is
to be
evidence.
proved. This has to be proved. But
No,
there is a second thing. When the RTS crashed, actually, what the presiding officers had to do, they had to manually transmit travel to the returning officer with the results. But you know how much time they took to
That's
transmit?
exactly the point, because
12
that was,
hours.
that
12
was
hours.
my next question. For example, okay, fine, that after midnight, Secretary Election appeared on the media and said that RTS crashed, and now we would be managing manually. That happened in previous
Mortals.
elections. 56 hours it took to the Election Commission to announce all the results.
Okay.
Even suppose that if there were delays of few, for example, usually we had the final results in previous elections in the VRs. So, okay, fine, that there was a problem. You could say, okay, take into account 5-6 hours. So, by Thursday morning or the 26th of July, we should have all the results.
Look,
but it took Election Commission
look,
56 hours. Do you
I'm
think that they have the explanation for that?
I'm fascinated by this question, because if you study India's democracy, right? We mention India as some kind of gold standard in Pakistan. In India, you don't have counting and declaration of result on the very same day. They take this sweet time.
Absolutely.
The only thing is you have to start trusting the institutions. Look, what is happening is we are looking
No,
at...
my question is, when you reverted back to the old practice,
Yeah.
why it took 56 hours?
Perhaps because it was too cumbersome. Because you thought that the first thing is going to actually bail you out. It didn't. And then you didn't have the kind of human resource to tabulate, to bring it together and publish it. What you are looking at is a train crash. And you're saying that 3 parties planned the train crash. That is my problem. My issue is that things happen. In Pakistan, where we are learning to, walk this tightrope, you can always fall. But the problem is somebody is saying that somebody was shaking it. I don't see that happening. The problem is if I start believing in that,
okay,
you have to cover and look
Can
at 3 things.
Can I add a very small thing? If you're please, after you.
Three humble submissions. Look what I'm being told. I'm being told that 2, 3, 4, 5 parties that lost, they have to be trusted. But every state institution, right from army to election commission to judiciary to so many other important people, shouldn't be trusted because they were all in it. I cannot
Why
believe
should
that.
we not trust Nadra?
But
Nadra is
the
answering.
issue
but
is,
it is
do you
not
think,
officially saying
Mr.
it, no?
Zamir, do you think that the attitude of the Election Commission was also really democratic, because they are also prejudging, saying, and if there were some problems, some irregularities, they could acknowledge. They could have been, more reconciliatory, saying, okay, we will look into it. And now, after Nadra took a position and said that RTS was working fine, now they decided to order inquiry. But even we have seen a statement from Mr. Raza Rabbani. He said that that inquiry was just to, give a clean chit to the Election Commission. It won't make a big difference.
No,
so this controversy
so
is,
Kamran,
in another institution we are not supposed to trust.
Kamran, you mentioned the 56 hours. It took the Election Commission 56 hours. And you said only 2% of result was available with the Election Commission, which actually came to them through electronic means, and the rest was physical. Now he has mentioned that there were about 80,000
more than that
polling stations, more than
82,000, yeah.
82,000 polling stations. Now if you count that take the 2% out and leave the rest as physical, how much time you think that manually it would
I
take?
will go back to 2013. Listen, 2013.
And Pakistan's geography.
Before midnight, maximum results were available. But Nawaz Sharif gave the victory speech, and that was handled
But Kamran,
manually.
But Kamran, you are not getting. When I earlier said that, when this app went down, according to the ROs, they said that this app which was in their handsets went down. And after that, they waited more than 6 to 8 hours. They were waiting, continuously waiting, and they were saying that, wait, we are uploading, we are correcting this issue. And after that, they decided that they should be physically transported to the presiding officers, and from there on it would be counted again, and then the results would be forwarded to the Election Commission. Now you tell me, you have yourself said that it was, before that it was only 2%. 98% on, you have said it, 98% were supposed to be counted manually, and that too after 8 hours of delay.
No, it was not about the counting. They would just need to transmit the results. It was not about the counting. Because counting was being done manually, it was just the transmission of the results.
No, wait. When all these from other than 2%, the results from the polling stations were reaching to the presiding officer, there it was actually again counted totally. So then they were forwarding the result to the Election Commission, and believe me, they were actually again doing the recounting, doing the double check on what the numbers they were getting, and then they announced the results.
But opposition parties, opposition parties actually are far from convinced. Our discussion, of course, will continue. We have to go for a break here, so stay with us. Welcome back. You are watching Capital Connection, and we are discussing post-election scenario and, of course, the controversy surrounding this RTS and the allegations of rigging. Before the break, of course, that we had a heated discussion. It's not just the People's Party, the PMLN. Look, that yesterday MQM Pakistan, which are now allies of Tehreek-e-Insaf in the center, also had a protest in Karachi.
Right.
And Farooq Sattar, you know what he said? He said that MQM have been defeated by effort of human and the aliens.
Okay.
Even though that they are now becoming part of the government in the center, they are also saying the same thing what other parties are saying.
So let us first qualify that by aliens, he means some spy agencies of Pakistan, right? This is what they keep on referring to. Of course, let me put it in a candid way, the security establishment. Right, security establishment, particularly intelligence agencies, because they then say that invisible people who have raided from Mars or elsewhere. The humble submission is, when you look at any conjecture or any claim, you have to see whether there is a counterclaim or possibility of another explanation as well. What you have to realize, Farooq Sattar Sahab will speak this way because he is responsible for crumbling down of his party as well. When they actually bifurcated the party, that actually cost them the election, the Senate election and this election.
So the same principle we can apply to the Election Commission. Election Commission would say the same thing, that elections are free and fair.
You have to realize,
because they are supposed to, because they won't admit.
No, but you have to realize, I'm not defending Election Commission as in nothing wrong happened. I'm saying whatever happened was a product of ineptness or human failure or technological failure rather than a grand conspiracy. Before the election, I kept on looking around for evidence of people who were saying that people are being converted. And one interesting incident took place where one gentleman is standing and he says that he is a khalai makhluk or an alien who's telling me to convert, and then the camera doesn't pan. That person is never shown. In the evening, that person says it is agricultural department, right? The entire story changes. But the humble submission is...
But if you read the initial findings of the European Union observers, what did they say?
Did they find any evidence? No, they did
not. They talk about the environment before the election, level playing field.
Environment
was politicization of the judiciary.
Environment was being environment was being vitiated by the parties that lost as well. You have to realize that PMLN came up with a very boisterous narrative where they were saying that they are being cornered.
Let me say what you're trying to say, that there was no pre-poll rigging, no political
No, I'm not
engineering,
saying that.
and even on election day there was no foul play.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that whatever you're talking about, especially pre-poll rigging, show me the evidence. Because I haven't seen any, you haven't
But
seen any.
do you have the evidence? Do we have the evidence to
There
back
are
up this
smoking
claim?
guns everywhere. You
Like
can
what?
see, you can
Like
see
what?
the
For
NAB
example,
cases against one political party, PMLN, has been opened just before the elections. And they were not given exemption as per the court orders, but all other parties were getting exemptions that, okay, we postpone this until the elections. Even Pakistan People's Party was given exemption. And also the conviction of PMLN stalwart in NA 60.
But do you think this is really a compelling evidence, because these references were underway since over a year
Many
now?
years.
Well, everybody
circumstantial.
is
The
saying
NA60
that.
thing was
what,
going
what
on.
is the role of election observers? EU observers are saying this. Even American State Department has said that there was no level playing field offered. So if we have to trust observers, they have a legitimate role in the election process. And
next
and
time
if they
we
say
are-
something, if we take legitimacy from them that there was no foul play, we have to give
No, then the
credence to their
question is,
claims.
the question is then whom should we trust? Should we trust the Election Commission of Pakistan? Should we trust the security establishment? Because they have already on record said that they were not interfering in the political process. Even before the elections, they said that even the troops were being deployed, they were only going to assist the Election Commission of Pakistan. They have no direct role. But other political parties saying something else.
Well,
so who is more trustworthy? The question is, whom should we trust?
Now you tell me, should we trust the US administration or the
No, just forget about the US. We're
your
talking about our
EU?
own people.
Should we trust?
I talked about the
Yes,
example of
yes.
MQM.
No,
they were going to be part of the government. They were also saying the same thing.
No, my point is that when, until and unless you don't have a solid evidence, Wasim has just said that it was a pre-engineered thing and that it was all the moves were deliberate to put down one single party. I don't buy that, because the things were
NAB
going
is
on.
there.
No, NAB
cases are an evidence. I mean,
But they continued for 2 years.
not
for
too
long,
long.
for
1.5
long,
years.
for long.
Accelerated just
No,
3-4 months.
But
But
don't you
you
think
three,
that,
4 months or 5 months ago.
everybody even knew that both Nawaz Sharif and Maryam Nawaz would be in jail before the elections? Everybody knew that.
Yeah,
So,
everybody
how-
knew.
It
how-
was
how
so
is wrong
predictable.
in that?
No,
What
should
is wrong
the
in
courts
that?
be that predictable?
What is wrong
Should
in
the
that?
courts that be predictable? Then you have Justice Siddiqui talking about something
that
very
is an
serious.
evidence.
No, something
No,
very
again,
serious.
he's being
but
asked for evidence and he hasn't been able to
given
produce
any
it.
evidence. It's
No, we
easy
don't
to
know yet.
say.
I mean, what's
It's-
happening?
it's-
He hasn't
evidence.
so far
No, no,
given
no,
any
I
evidence.
think Khwaja Haris should be blamed for both Nawaz and Maryam behind bars, because he didn't plead the case well. So why are you blaming the people or
No,
the
Kamran,
other
here's the
who
problem.
went to the vote?
Kamran.
They didn't put them behind bars. It was the responsibility of Khwaja Haris to bail them out, to get them out.
Kamran,
He had
here's the
ample
simple,
time to fight
here's
their
the
case.
simple, a very humble submission. I know one thing: before going into the elections, we knew that there was bad blood in the system, right? There was polarization, and there were people who thought that they were being cornered. I am with you when you look at 2014, when there was sit-in, there might be some involvement. At that time, we were very vocal. But later on, what happened? Panama surfaces, and somehow, somewhere, instead of giving a very simple money trail, PMLN decided that it is going to do nothing about it and then cry foul. That was the time when you agitated the
But
system.
it is very interesting. Sirajul Haq was the one who first went to the Supreme Court. Now he also joins hand with the PMLN. Actually
this is
backing their
politics.
stance.
So this
Backing
is
their
politics.
position and their
So
stance.
this is politics. This is politics. So why are
Survival.
you saying that it was engineered? No, this is politics.
No,
This
it's-
is
but
But why
nobody
everyone?
wants to
I mean,
interfere
Maulana
in that.
Fazlur Rahman,
It's not only
Sirajul
Rajul
Haq,
Party.
Of course,
so
you
many
know, all
political
these
parties
people
who
lost
were
their seat.
used to be,
Yes.
even the PSP, Mustafa Kamal, who were considered to be close to the security establishment. Why all these political parties are crying foul?
So it means that whatever this thing was created in the air, that there is something engineering going on from behind the scenes. It has been, exposed that
No,
nothing
but do you
of that
think that
sort
things-
was
but do you
going on.
think that
because
things are
PSP
that black and white?
No, but PSP.
I mean, do you think that we can give clean check to either of
I'm
the
not
parties?
asking
ready
that.
to give clean chit to anyone. I'm not here to give clean chit to PTI or any other political party. I'm not here to give clean chit to any establishment, be it any
No, my problem is
establishment.
that my sympathy is with PTI, because their genuine mandate might have been compromised because of how things have,
Here's
been
the
played out.
question for you. You must have studied many or followed many elections. Do you remember any election in Pakistan's history where the vanquished actually said that, yes, I have lost and there was no rigging at all? Ever. Never happens, right? This is the cultural thing. And you were saying that this time there's a lot of noise. I tell you why.
But then you also provide
There's
them
an
the
erosion.
circumstantial evidence, all the issues that we were talking
Now
about,
it is
the
not
RBS,
there.
Now
the
there are
incompetence of
five
the election
political
commission.
parties. Now there are 5 major political parties who are crying foul and saying that the rigging happened.
but there are 7.
Seven.
Two,
Okay,
I tell you, two others are media groups.
But in 2013 election, there were 22 political parties who were saying that this was RO's election in 2018.
But election observers were not saying this. This time it's not only political parties.
Which election
No,
observer has said that the elections are
international
rigged?
media,
I've,
entire international media is saying
International
this.
media,
Washington
you
Post,
but
Financial
you
Post.
Do you know how international
That
media
would
is working?
No, no.
Who is
How it's
managing
working?
international
No,
media?
Do you buy into Trump's
Who is
theory that the
managing? I mean,
press
who
is
is
bad?
managing
No, I don't agree with
no.
I'm not agreeing with Zamir here. I tell you what happened. European Union's observers came and they were very polite because they listened to everybody. They included everybody's impression in it, right? Similarly, when you talk about the foreign media, they might not have that kind of insight as we have because we live here and it is a matter of our
Even these
survival.
There is
High Court
another,
judge.
there is
Even
another
the-
perspective
they-
because
they-
they have the kind of freedom. They have the kind of freedom to write
Excuse
what
me,
is the reality.
excuse me,
country. In
but
this
let me
country.
say, excuse me, but let me say that, like,
In
you
this
know,
country.
all these international media which was crying before the elections and even the election day and after the elections, and most of them were the Indian sponsored
You know,
writers.
no,
and
not
but, no, wait, Wasim.
I mean,
But
Washington
do you
Post
think
is not
that
Indian
do you
No,
think
I'm
that
not saying. I'm not
CNN
saying
is
only
not-
Washington
Do you
Post.
think that Indians have influence over New York Times or Washington Post? Their
No,
editorials are very.
no. So I don't give credibility to these two newspapers. Why should I?
Why not?
Why
So
should
who
I?
is credible
No,
then?
why
Who is
should I?
credible then?
Look,
No, but you
look,
can't.
For
but
me,
you simply can't
for
ignore.
me, Dawn News, Nation.
So Dawn is also saying that. Dawn is also saying this.
Listen,
No,
my
no,
local
no.
newspapers are
But you
more
have to-
credible
we live,
than.
but we live in a globalized world, and you know
Kamran,
that EU. Listen, the
then
EU
you have to come to me as well.
EU Observer Mission, they are compiling their report, and they would come up with the final details. Because if they found any irregularities or rigging, that have direct implications for your GSP plus,
Right.
your trade.
me-
So
listen,
you
let
can't
me
say
answer-
that
no,
we
no,
should
no,
just
no,
simply
no,
just
let me
ignore what
answer-
No,
what
no,
the other
we are
world
not
said.
going to
I don't
ignore
want to go. Let's wait for that report and then we can talk about it.
No, I'm
about
just
it.
saying
but
that
my point
what
is
kind of implications
What
that you may
Wasim
face.
was implicating was he was saying that the entire international media. Well, don't you know that how Mushahid Hussain has been working in the past and how he has been working now?
No, but-
don't you know how Hussain Haqqani works and how he
fine,
has
you-
been working
you
before?
brought
his
about-
working
you
now?
brought about- no, you
wait,
brought
wait,
about
on
very-
CNN, he doesn't on
Okay,
Washington
you
Post,
brought-
he doesn't on
you brought
Financial
another
Times.
important-
From UK,
So,
from
okay,
UK to
Wasim-
Australian
Wasim-
newspapers to
I think we have to go for a
America,
break.
Imran Khan is not
Okay,
that
we
powerful.
have to go
I
for
don't
a
think
break
so.
trying to
because
convince
Zamir
me
brought
that
a very interesting
international media
aspect
is
that
not
this international
managed.
media is also being managed by someone from Pakistan. So we have to go for a break here. So stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching Capital Connection, and before the break, discussion was really heating up, and Mr. Zamir pointed out that why, we were getting the negative, press from international media, because he said that someone from PMLN was trying to manage. Do you think, are we that much resourceful that we can influence
No,
the New York Times or Washington?
No,
We
but you
are
respect-
not.
You have to let me answer now. I'm not saying that anybody is influencing foreign media. I'm not saying that anybody is influencing most of Pakistani media. What I'm saying is whatever discourse is going on within the country will reflect internationally as well, right? Yeah. This is what happens. The problem here is that two of the oldest media groups in this country have been alienated for some reason, and they feel victim also. And somehow that also compounded the problem because two people or two very influential groups wanted either wanted or saw things that nobody else was seeing. And then it became part of the national discourse. The only problem is that I want to take the pin to the entire bubble and only asking. I'm only asking, give me the evidence. If you have the evidence, we will accept it. The second thing is, the inquiry is most
principle
welcome.
of plausible deniability, because obviously those who were,
No, but you
if
will-
they were orchestrating, obviously they won't leave their footprints. on
I
it.
mean, on
Like
one
in
side,
Marjorie was
on one
also
side,
saying,
you
give me the
believe
evidence.
that, on one side, you believe that international media cannot be influenced by anybody. But then you attribute godlike powers to the people who can manipulate the system. That doesn't happen. You will always leave some forensic, some kind of evidence. You will leave some kind of fingerprints that can be picked up.
Okay,
But I know
let-
for certain that if you talk about evidence, Justice Siddiqui has solid evidence. He said his life
Sure,
is being
he has
yes,
shown
yeah,
with
he's
that.
going to show that. He has been called on 28th of August in Supreme
So
Judicial
far we
Council.
have-
He has
he
very
should,
solid
he should.
evidence of interference.
I think that would be a
and
turning
he's
point
not
for
PMLN.
Pakistan's judiciary
And
as
also,
well.
former
That
Chief
would
Justice
be-
of Pakistan, Justice Iftikhar Chaudhry, he has questioned the credibility of the decision against Nawaz Sharif.
Don't get
I
me started on Iftikhar
actually
Chaudhry.
question
I
his
think,
credibility now.
And the lawyer community.
I think I should revert back to
proper
my
segment.
original question that I asked in the beginning. In this messy situation, should Imran Khan really be, worried at the moment? Because he has promised new Pakistan, he has promised so much thing to his voters and his supporters. But given how polarized we are, how do you think that he will be able to deal with this, situation?
I think
First,
it-
politically,
I-
first big challenge to take along all these
His
political
first
parties.
speech
I
was
think-
really brilliant.
I-
You have to agree.
Yes,
Yeah, it was good.
I think it would be a wild horse for him to tame, and it will take some time. But I'm convinced that the things would have to will move on towards the right direction, and all these political parties would at least resort only to parliament and register their
One
whatever.
good thing is that they're acknowledging that no
Yes,
matter what
yes.
reservations that they
So
have,
I think-
they will
I
allow
think-
PTI to have to form the government. This is a positive
yes,
thing.
no. After forming the government, it's the the hindrances created by the opposition in the running of the government. What I mean to say is that if the political parties who will be sitting on the opposition benches, if they decide to take on the government in the parliament, that would be the best thing to do as far as democracy is concerned, as far as good governance would be concerned, because that would raise many questions, and we would be sitting here and raising fingers on the Imran Khan's 100 days agenda, and we will be telling him that, look, you promised this and you didn't deliver
But in
this.
any
So
political-
I think that would be a difficult. It would be a very difficult. As I said, it would be a wild horse, and it would take some time for him to tame it. But I
But
think-
you talked about the election, his election speech. He sounded more
Victory speech,
victory speech, sounded more, reconciliatory.
Yeah.
Do you think that the kind of challenges that Pakistan has been facing, and even in the past we have seen that how we evolve consensus on so many issues within the parliament and even outside,
Right.
considering the fact that how he was, he used to target the leadership of PMLN and the People's Party, do you think that he can show some qualities of being a statesman and take along all these political parties?
I think his speech was really reaching out, right? It has the potential to heal the people as well. When Imran Khan was behaving rudely, we criticized him. Similarly, there was a time when Mian Nawaz Sharif used to behave in the same manner, or People's Party. We could criticize them as well. But right now, you need a healing touch because the country is really polarized. The problem, and I sort of agree with what Zamir is saying, is the parliament itself. It will be a hung parliament even when the government is formed. You will not have that kind of majority to pass treasury bills. You won't have that kind of majority to pass any legislation either. The problem then will be, remember what has happened right now. Today, tomorrow, day after tomorrow, whenever Imran Khan takes over, what you will see is the breach of a dam that has stood there for 22 years. That if nobody, you and I, both, stopped taking Imran Khan seriously as a potential prime minister. And once he becomes the prime minister, and once he starts his work, if the parliament gives him too much tough time, what will happen is that the entire system will continue for 8-9 months, and then there will be some kind of hitting the wall. When it happens, you'll have to go for another snap election. And I tell you, if that happens, the opposition will not be happy after that, because then Imran Khan is going to get a lot of support from the people.
Do you see that scenario? But he seems very
we are
confident.
split balling here.
Well, there are because we can't predict future, but I can see there would be problems for Imran Khan inside the parliament and outside the parliament. But we have to see how he behaves as prime minister, as statesman. If he goes for some populistic steps and appeasing masses, I think he has a fair chance of sustaining his rule for next 3, 4, 5 years. I don't see snap elections.
4 years.
Yeah.
Obviously, because we have seen so many disruptions in democracy, and
he has used a term, and I have very huge objection to it: populist. You know, I was listening to Francis Fukuyama, and Francis Fukuyama actually gives you 3 definitions of a populist leader. The first definition is amazing, that he is always short-term focused. He will always compromise the long-term interest for the short-term gains. The second thing he says that he will always define the nationhood in a reductionist manner, will exclude some part of the country like Donald Trump does. And the third thing, of course, is that he has to be a charismatic leader.
I think he
the third,
all three
no, he doesn't qualify the first 2. He might or might not. I am not saying he is charismatic, but he doesn't qualify for the first 2, because whatever I've seen that he's planning for the long term. When it comes to economy. The second thing is, when he talks about Pakistan, he is not saying that Muhajirs or Sindhis or Punjabis are not my people, right? He is not saying that Pashtuns are not my people. That's why he is not a populist. But pray he doesn't become one, because internationally what we have seen is the rising tide of the populist leaders. And there's another problem as well. We keep on criticizing Imran Khan, who is some sort of known quantity for 22 years. But what happens if he fails, and then you have a truly populist leader, because then you have TLP, then you have other parties.
You know, regarding his fate, history can be a guide.
Yeah.
So our history suggests that whoever becomes a prime minister in this country, at the end of the day, mostly have never had
completed
their term, or positive end. Do you see a change this time around?
Well, you never know. I cannot predict anything, but I hope so that he will continue for next 5 years, and he'll be the prime minister for 5 years. When this is what I hope so. And but the foremost thing which I believe is that, of course, all these things which he has said, he has to do and deliver on them. But I'm convinced, and I'm convinced on this argument, and that is that the accountability thing should be across the board.
Yeah.
And every process that starts for an accountability should be reaching to its logical end. And there should be no pressures taken by the government or by this accountability institution.
And his big test is coming up on the 20th of August. The special bench is resuming that treason case against General Musharraf.
Yes.
Again, you are mixing apples and oranges.
No. You are saying across the board.
Corruption is something else.
But this is also a corruption.
That is judiciary.
That is judiciary abrogating the constitution.
You cannot influence
Abrogating the constitution is a big crime.
Yes, NAB is also probing a corruption case.
No, I'm saying
there is a difference.
Yes, corruption case against
that should be taken to the logical end, and whoever is found guilty, it should be given
accountability means that whatever, if you have done wrong, whether
if you have
played with the constitution or breached law or done something financially,
but here's the
then
question.
you should be
accountable. I'm talking about the only accountability as a NAB department and accountability.
I have a question for you. I have a question
by the parliament.
Because
why we are so defensive about Musharraf?
I'm not saying that. He should be.
I think we have to have another session to discuss.
No, but you have
to
you have to appreciate the nuances.
Listen, that's the time actually we have.
I think we should be sentenced on Article 6.
Many thanks, Farooq Patafi, Wasim Abbasi, and Zamir Haider. That's it from this edition of Capital Connection, which of course was very heated one. So thanks for watching.